Can those cheap $50 bug detectors on Amazon or other online shopping sites detect every type of vehicle tracker? Can those expensive TSCM bug detectors that cost thousands of dollars detect every type of vehicle tracker? The short answer to both of these questions is a resounding no. That is right. No bug detector, regardless of how much you paid for it, can find every type of vehicle tracker out there. But then you probably knew that already, didn't you? The big question is, why can't they detect all of them? And the bigger question is, what can you do to find those pesky trackers if the bug detectors fail you? One big reason bug detectors can't find all vehicle trackers is because of what they are designed to do. You see, these devices, cheap or expensive, are designed to look for radio frequencies, or what we often refer to as RF signals. But what most people don't know is that many tracking devices made today are, by design, made to evade simple RF detection methods. This video is sponsored by OREP Insurance and Working PI Magazine. OREP is a leading provider of private investigator liability insurance. Visit orep.org for a quote today. Passive tracking devices are completely invisible to bug detectors because they never transmit an RF signal. Rather, they only receive radio signals and record that data. These passive tracking devices are ones we are seeing a lot of these days, especially in domestic and other cases where the individual doing the tracking has access to the vehicle. They can just grab the device when it's convenient, download the data real quick, change or charge the battery, then redeploy the device, and no one is any the wiser. And when you sweep near, over, or directly on one of these devices with your cheap or your expensive bug detector equipment, you get nada, nothing, zilch. It simply cannot detect the device because it is not, nor never will, transmit a radio signal. Then there are the intermittent transmission devices, which we're seeing a lot of too. When most people think of tracking devices, they think of the old GPS-style trackers. You know, the ones in the clunky metal box with a large magnet on it to help it stay attached to the underside of the vehicle. But tracking devices that do intermittent transmissions record the data but are not transmitting all of the time. What they do is transmit on a set schedule, like once an hour, every 15 minutes, or maybe at 2 o'clock in the morning. The scheduling of the data transmissions on these trackers help these devices in many ways too. First off, because they are not transmitting live, they save a ton of battery power since the biggest part of their power usage is when they transmit data. And the further between the transmission times, the more power they save, and that power savings means smaller batteries are needed, and those smaller batteries mean smaller tracking devices overall. So when you use standard bug detectors, cheap or expensive, unless you are near to the tracker, the moment it is transmitting, they will never detect it. Another huge reason the device may not be detected, especially by cheap bug detectors, is called frequency gaps. GSM trackers run in the 824 to 920 megahertz range, while more common GPS trackers run between 700 megahertz and 2.4 gigahertz. A lot of the cheap devices may not necessarily cover all of these radio frequencies. Now, to be fair, most say they cover up to 6 gigahertz, but I see a lot that only go up to 2 gigahertz, or they go up to 6 gigahertz, but they start at 900 megahertz, so they lose that lower frequency range. And, well, most of these tracking devices do not just transmit on a single frequency. Rather, they do what is called signal hopping, and that can lead to a lot of bug detectors to miss the RF transmission altogether. In order to find these devices, you need to know where and what to look for, and we will discuss that here in a moment. Another very common type of tracking device are Bluetooth tracking devices. You know, things like Apple AirTags and tile trackers and those other devices that are sold as convenience trackers to help you keep track of your keys, your luggage, and other valuables. The big problem with these devices is that they first do intermittent transmissions, and their transmission signals are very weak, and this weak signal is by design and very difficult to see with a bug detector. These devices are also called peer-to-peer tracking devices. They use crowdsourcing networks. I know this can get a bit confusing, but basically these devices talk to other similar devices, as well as cell phones and laptops that are running certain apps with very short, very weak signal pings, sort of just like saying, "Hi, my name is John, I am here." Then the network logs the information and the location data is sent to the end user via the network, not via the device directly. And if you think that is scary, well, we need to talk about the hardwired vehicle tracking devices we are seeing these days. These are hardwired in one fashion or another to your vehicle's power system. And if done correctly, well, these devices are always turned off until you start your vehicle. Then they're powered on, thus eliminating the need for their own power supply altogether. These used to be very easy to find. All you needed to do is look at your fuse panel and see if anything was spliced into one of the wires, then trace that spliced wire to the tracking device. But now, because of technology, there are much easier ways for people to track you with a hardwired device. The most common is through the OBD2 port on your vehicle. OBD stands for On-Board Diagnostic. This port is used by your mechanic or car dealer to pull any codes from the vehicle's computer to see what is wrong when you're having car problems. But there are tracking devices that plug directly into the OBD2 port and just use the power that is at that port to power the tracking device. And many now also have another port on it, so if anyone needs to plug into the OBD2 port, they can. But that is not the only hardwired tracking device we're seeing. Remember the old way of doing it? Splicing into a wire at the fuse block? Well, now there are simple splicer adapters that they can use that plug into the fuse port itself, and it has a fuse and a hot lead right on it, and if done correctly, it looks fairly normal to the untrained eye. And then there are the hard-to-find locations where trackers can be placed. I'm talking about places like back up underneath the dashboard, deep in the engine compartment, or under a spare tire, just to name a few locations. You see, most RF detectors are made by design to identify RF signals within close proximity. We often refer to this as near-field sweeping, which is good in many ways, as the RF detector, if calibrated correctly, will not signal false alarms to devices further away. But it also hinders them from finding and alerting you to these deeply well-hidden tracking devices. And if you turn the sensitivity down on the bug detector, well, then you start to get a lot of what we call false positives. And false positives lead you to chasing what we refer to as ghost signals. Ghost signals can be distant signals like a neighbor's cell phone, or simply a radio signal reflection or bounce. You see, one big secret most people don't know or seldom think of is that we are constantly being bombarded every second of every day by thousands of radio frequencies. And those signals are bouncing all around us. And the lower the sensitivity you set your bug detector, the more likely it is that it will alarm to those reflective ghost signals. And most vehicles today are pretty much radio frequency pollution zones. They have sensors and gadgets all over that are reporting all kinds of data via some sort of RF signal. They have Bluetooth connectivity built in for your convenience so you can connect your cell phone to the vehicle. Some even have Wi-Fi hotspots built into them so you can connect to the internet via your vehicle. Then there are the keyless entry systems, remote start systems, backup cameras, tire pressure sensors, and all of that other technology that makes our lives so much better, that are all sending radio frequency signals all of the time. This RF pollution, as we call it, makes detecting an RF signal from an actual threat very difficult, as they essentially jam or clutter the RF frequencies. So if the RF detector you have can't detect the tracker, what can you do? Well, any good vehicle sweep is going to consist of a full physical inspection of the vehicle. I will quickly go over the most common places you need to look for a tracking device. First, do an exterior inspection of the vehicle. This includes looking in the wheel wells and the undercarriage. By the way, under the car is the most common place a tracker is found. You also want to check bumpers, license plates, anywhere something could be hidden. Next, go to the interior of the car. Pull all of the floor mats out. One common place for tile tracker style tracking devices is under a floor mat. Check up under the seats too, and check that OBD2 port too. You can just Google the make, model, and year of your vehicle and OBD2 port location to find out where it is. Most are up under the dash near the steering wheel column. Then remove everything from every storage area in the vehicle and inspect each item. Do this for the glove box, the door panel storage areas, back of the front seats, the metal console, every storage area. This is also a great way to clean and declutter your vehicle too. And make sure you check the trunk or the rear area of the vehicle. I always suggest to remove the spare tire, remove the jack, remove everything. We have found many trackers under the spare tire or under the jack in the past. While inspecting all of these areas is very time consuming and, well, a bit dirty at times too, it is necessary. You see, the biggest secret of all is that we find more bugs, more tracking devices, more threats by completing a physical inspection than we do using all of the expensive bug sweeping equipment at our disposal, because no bug detector can find every bug out there.